we are, Dr. McNamara. How are you today?
Good, good. Good to talk to you, Joel.
I'm Dr. Joel Goodin. This is Dr. Patrick McNamara. Um, and we call each other Joel and Patrick. But Dr. McNamara has agreed to sort of interview with me today and sort of just have a discussion. This is the first of a series of interviews I'm doing with different colleagues and students that have become colleagues, just different types of people that can sort of share more about what it's like to be in academia and what it's like to be in a doctoral program and also to be dissertating. And so today we're going to get to know Dr. McNamara a little better. So thank you for being with us.
Thanks for inviting me, and I think this is a great idea. I wish I had had something like this when I was a graduate student. I met with my advisor maybe once every couple of weeks, and then during times when I was actually doing the experiments a bit more frequently, but it was rare, and never really got to ask him about, his general views on research and stuff. It was all so formal, so
Right.
This is much better these days.
Well, as I said to you before we started recording, I really want to sort of pull back the curtain of, because there's so much sort of like unknown as a student. You're putting so much trust in the dissertation chair and the committee, and for a while you don't know for sure that until rapport is built and trust is earned, you don't know that you can trust them. So, and you don't always know how to navigate all of it. It's a very uncertain process, and you're putting all your trust in Dr. McNamara or myself, or maybe both of us if we're on the same committee. And so I wanted to pull back that curtain a little bit and share a little more of how we are behind that curtain, and then maybe some Dr. McNamara is going to share a little bit about sort of maybe some insight or some expertise he has about one specific area or thing to think about with regard to the dissertation. So I want to get started. Dr. McNamara, can you tell us about where you grew up? What did you plan to be growing up, and sort of just give us a little bit of history of where you came from.
Well, my dad was in the Air Force, so we moved around quite a bit, and so I lived when I was growing up in several different places. Like every 2 or 3 years we would move. So I lived in New Mexico, Springfield, Massachusetts, Istanbul, Turkey, several different places. So, but I spent most of my teenagerhood in Massachusetts, in a town outside of Boston, and that's where I went to school as well, college and graduate school in Boston. So.
Great. Are you a Sox fan?
Sure, yeah. I remember the day they first won the pennant after some 80 years of not winning.
Right, right. Okay, and where are you now? Are you still in the Boston area?
No, I'm in Minneapolis now.
Okay.
For family reasons, I came to Minneapolis. Been here for 2 years.
Okay.
Miss Boston terribly.
I bet you do.
But Minneapolis is nice too.
It seems that people from Boston are very loyal to Boston. Is that the impression you have?
Certainly Red Sox Nation for sure, and for a long time we had to put up with all kinds of BS about Tom Brady.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we're pretty loyal fans, but Boston is also got a very transient feel sometimes too, because there's so many universities there. People come in, they stay a couple of years, and then they leave. So it's really interesting place to live. Culturally, it's very rich because of all the universities, and it's got this old town feel too, because it's got a big colonial part of it is somewhat preserved. You know, it's one of the oldest cities in America, of course. So yeah, I miss it. I mean, all the rest of my family is there, and all my closest friends are there. But I'm starting to like Minneapolis as well. Minneapolis is a bigger town. It's on the same latitude as Montreal, so it's colder in the winter. But we get about the same amount of snow as I remember getting in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So the weather sort of averages out. People are quite nice here. There's, you know, as you probably know, there's been a lot of civil unrest due to the, you know, recent issues, and COVID hasn't helped anybody. So it's been a rough last year, but it's been rough for everybody the world over this past year.
It has indeed. How has it been being, just to touch on that since you brought it up, how has it been being an academic in Minneapolis during this time? Do you have any thoughts to share on that without getting too political or you know, into the weeds of it all?
Well, I think we're lucky both as students and faculty at NCU during COVID. I mean, the rest of the world had to transition onto online stuff, but we at NCU have been doing it right along and doing it pretty well. You know, whereas the rest of the academic world had to learn how to teach online in just the space of a few weeks. You know, we went through years of experimentation trying to figure out how to do it well, do it a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. We're still learning every single day, but the rest of the world is playing catch up, you know, so it wasn't as hard for me as it was for me and my colleagues, like back in Boston, or I had several of them like on the phone with me. How do I do this? Do I just stand in front of a camera and lecture like I usually do? No, no, no. There's something called engagement, you know, like try to connect with your students, you know, because you're so much more anonymous when everything's online, and nobody really holds your hand when you're doing all of this online, and all you're getting is like typically like just negative feedback from your teacher or dissertation chair. So it's you know, it has those difficulties, but the benefits, as we all know, is flexibility, and you get to follow your own interests much more, and get to go as deep as you want to, you know, when you want to. So it's got benefits, but the difficulties of online teaching and being a student and dissertating, I think, is you've got to some extent, be a self-starter, to some extent, you know, really be on top of things. In terms of being a faculty, I think you need to find a way to make some sort of connection, personal connection with whoever you're working with, whatever student you're working with, because it is so anonymous, and we're all trying to balance, you know, like we've got kids at home who are usually in school, and we nevertheless have to pay bills, even though our work life has been disrupted because of COVID. We're worrying about all the news we get about COVID. Some of it says it's, you know, it's apocalyptic. Other sources say it's not so bad, and you know, we get all these conflicting messages constantly about it. And we're trying to figure out what the heck is going on, trying to keep ourselves and our families safe. Meanwhile, none of the demands on us stop. We still got to do the dissertation. We still got to do our work. We still got to. So we're trying to keep all these balls in the air, like, and maintain some sanity and dignity through this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy, but I find my students doing it with relatively good cheer, without going off the deep end, without, you know, a lot of stress or storm and stress. lots of dignity and still doing really high quality work. Others, some students are really struggling, but hey, we all are.
Right, I've definitely noticed it. It's slowing everybody down a bit, but like you said, our students and our faculty have been resilient through this.
Yeah.
I think the whole country has been, but definitely when you're working with a doctorate, trying to get through a dissertation, it's hard enough without a pandemic
Yeah.
on top. And
Well, yeah.
You talked about about engagement and sort of I was thinking the disconnection between students that could definitely be an issue with online teaching. What are your specific ways that you try to engage with students?
Well, I should do better at this, but uh, appending a note at the beginning of all of my feedback is like sort of fundamental. Like, okay, this is what you did right, and this is what you need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's all is needed. I mean, every student is different. Some need phone calls. I'm constantly trying to balance. There's always a group of students who need, um, that phone contact, whereas other students not only don't need it, they don't really like it that much. So, but the ones who need it tend to take up a lot. I'm not complaining, but they do take up a lot of time and energy, and so you usually can't talk to everyone via the phone or a Zoom call, a Zoom meeting. But for the ones who need it, I think it makes a big difference in terms of they feel more engaged when you do.
Right.
So a combination of the right tone and feedback, a respectful tone and feedback, and written feedback, along with a phone or a Zoom meeting, usually gives you enough to work with, and then over time, noting in the feedback, okay, you're doing better on this. It could be weeks. First you get feedback like, I'm sure if a student is listening to this, they'll say, oh yeah, you get feedback, say this needs work, this needs, and it's just a huge line of comments. But then to get feedback down the road a piece a month later, where, okay, wow, you did change this, you did do better on this, you are doing better on that,
Mm-hmm.
I think that helps as well.
And that's something I work towards as well. Just like, and sometimes I forget. I don't know if you ever forget, but to say to compliment them, and sometimes I'm in such a hurry. I only
Yeah.
point out the areas that are really an issue area, something that needs to be fixed, and I don't, for time's sake, because I have maybe so many papers to review. I'm always, sometimes I forget to say, and I don't realize, hey, this student needs to hear some good stuff too. They need to see, and it's not always implicit to them that the areas I haven't marked were good.
Yeah.
Where I didn't say work on this.
Yeah. I'd like to I always want to say that to students. Like, um, I sometimes don't have the time to tell you what you've been doing right. If I don't comment on something, it's probably because you've been doing it right. But I know I, as a human being, just would appreciate sometimes, okay, you are doing that right, or you have improved there. But I'd like to say to students, forgive us for not doing that as often as we should. We're doing the best we can, but if we're not commenting on something often, it's because you are doing better on that.
Yeah. Can you tell me a bit about how you can start wherever you want, really, but sort of becoming a PhD yourself, and then how you sort of built a line of research or multiple lines of research. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I developed 3 lines of research. based on my interest that developed in undergrad and graduate school, those lines of research were generally neuropsychology and specifically the neuropsychology of Parkinson's disease and other degenerative disorders. And then a second line of research was in the psychology of religion. And then a third line of research has been sleep medicine and dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And I got interested in sleep medicine and dreams when I was an undergraduate because I had to do a research project on it. And basically I was asked this question about REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. That's the form of sleep that we have these vivid dreams in. But REM sleep is characterized by rapid eye movements under the closed eyelids. When you're in REM sleep, you're paralyzed. You can't move. The anti-gravity muscles are shut down, so you can't move. But your sexual system is intensely activated. So men get erections, the clitoris gets engorged in women, and the body is also simultaneously undergoing autonomic nervous system storms. So your autonomic nervous system just goes haywire, and it's like discharging, like almost like epileptic fits, you know, and this whole set of things happen every 90 minutes while you're asleep. And so I was asked this question: why would Mother Nature every 90 minutes paralyze you, sexually activate your brain so that it's much more activated than it is during daytime, and force you to undergo these autonomic nervous system storms, and then finally force you to watch these things we call dreams? Why would Mother Nature do that? So I got fascinated with trying to answer that question, and many scientists say that's one of the biggest unanswered questions in biology, in psychology, is what's the function of REM sleep and dreaming? So, I really started to get into that, and I've been working on it for over 20 years now. And the psychology of religion stuff is just because I'm fascinated with religion. Most of the world's people are extremely religious, and it's just very odd that there's not even though it's a passionate thing for most of the world's population, it's just very odd that we don't really investigate it with respect, not trying to advocate for it and not trying to debunk it, but just respectfully investigate it, because it's a central human phenomenon. And then the neuropsychology stuff and Parkinson's stuff is because when I was an undergraduate, I knew a couple of very dear friends, mentors really, who died of Parkinson's. And so, I've published a few books on Parkinson's, a couple of books on sleep and dreams, and one book on the psychology of religion. So, I've been active in all three of those areas.
Well, I'm sorry to say I don't know this, but you've been in neuropsychology. What was your PhD specifically?
Human neuropsychology.
Okay, all right. So, some of our audience may not know. You can get very specific with PhD. We have at NCU we have the general psych sort of research degree, but you can definitely get into specific IO, forensic, and
health psychology.
But and then like yours, which is more physiologically, medically oriented, I believe.
Yeah.
Pardon me if I'm, you can correct that if that's not.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Best depiction.
I've worked as a psychologist. My work has been in hospitals. Like, for example, I worked at the VA in Boston for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
As a research psychologist, it was called. So I did teach and stuff, but I didn't take the traditional academic route of going tenure track position in teaching, I functioned as a psychologist in hospital environments, Boston City Hospital, Boston Hospital's called at the time, and the VA Medical Center in Boston. So, as a research psychologist, you can do that. You can make a career out of that in a medical environment. I did it at a VA.
That's fantastic. I really want to go back and ask about the REM sleep. Did you make any progress there? Do you have any ideas based on what you've done so far? Why Mother Nature would put that in place?
Well, I'm known in the sleep science community as proposing a hypothesis called genetic conflict hypothesis. Mm-hmm. It's long involved story, but our bodies and brains are composed of two major genomes. Really, everybody thinks there's one, but there's really two, and it's the lineage inherited down the maternal line and a lineage inherited down the paternal line. And those genetic elements have different genetic interests that often conflict. And the maternal line ended up constructing non-REM sleep physiology, and paternal line constructed REM sleep physiology. Mm-hmm. And because they have different genetic interests, those two sleep processes conflict, and they also complement one another to perform physiological functions, but they often conflict. And that conflict creates the strange physiologies we associate with REM sleep. That's a very short way of trying to describe a very complicated psychobiological story.
We may have to do a follow-up interview with some graphics or something to help us understand. Yeah. I wanted to switch gears just a little bit from, we're not going to get to know all about everything you've done, but one thing that obviously I'm trying to provide with these interview series is definitely from each person that I talk to, if you've been working with doctoral students, what specific expertise or insight can you share, and maybe just give a brief little strategy session or sort of behind the curtain discussion?
It's such a great question. I would say the time to consult with your chair and any other mentors you have is sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. And to save you a ton of heartache down the road when you're doing a dissertation, to do a lot of thinking at the beginning, particularly at NCU when you're working on chapter 1, to get the focus narrow enough so that it's practically doable project, and think about research ethics so that no ethical surprises turn up later on when you're trying to do IRB related application work, and to try to make the topic something that you have some passion for, because that passion is going to carry you through really difficult times. When your life is getting difficult to manage for personal reasons, and you get nothing but negative feedback from your committee, and you just want to say screw it all, the thing that will keep you going is that passion you have for the topic. So if you can choose a topic that you have some passion for, some personal investment in, and make it and narrow it down to a doable project where you know where you're going to recruit your participants from, and you've thought about and answered any potential ethical issues that might come up.
Mm-hmm.
If you can think about all those things, it will save you a lot of trouble and heartache down the road, I think.
Do you have any sort of advice for students as they seek a, we always talk about a justified research problem, one that current scholars are asking
Yeah.
for research on, how to find that while also making sure it's still something they're passionate about. Do you have anything to offer on that?
Yeah, I mean, the best way is the tried and true way of doing a decent literature search, background literature search. So say you've got an interest in this general topic area. Well, the thing to do is start reading on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and yes, read books relevant to the topic, but try to find out what journals are carrying publication on that topic. Go to the journals, go to the recent journals, and literally look for papers on it, or do literature searches on Scikit or PubMed or something, and even Google Scholar, and find a recent paper. And in that recent paper, look at their literature review. See what scholars are calling for in terms of next steps or next things to investigate in the area. So there's no substitute for a good literature review. In fact, I and other faculty at NCU have long advocated that the literature review be the first step in the dissertation process. As we currently structure things now, chapter 1 is the first step, but there is an argument to be made for making a pretty in-depth literature review be the first step. And to some extent, NCU has addressed that in pre-dissertation courses, but still perhaps not enough. We're finding out. NCU is collecting data on it, find out, but there's no substitute for a good lit review.
Right. I think you and I both see some students are prepared.
Yeah.
And they have a good concept when they're in chapter 1. Other students really needed to do maybe a chapter 2 first.
Yeah.
Good lit review.
Yeah. But if you are finding authors in your lit review saying, well, what we need now is X, Y, and Z, then that's a pretty good clue that the field generally is looking for more research on X, Y, and Z. And while that's not 100% certain that that's going to be a dissertation-worthy and doable project, it's a good clue that X, Y, and Z will be a pretty good place to look for a good topic.
Winding down, I guess, from the advice you have for students, what are some of the things your students would probably say? He always says this, or he always says this. What are you known for? What would your students say about you? And you're welcome to say plead the fifth on that, but surprise question, and I was just curious, what do you think they would?
They would. I think they would say they always see in the comment box in the course room just a short, curt note that says "see attached,"
Uh-huh.
and then that means like I have to open up the document and then see all the comments. So I don't know. I have to take the fifth to try to really think about that. I know that's the. They probably always chuckle about that "see attached," and then okay, yeah, see attached. Let me get to the the real comments here.
Right. In the course room, you're saying that.
Yeah, I never. I sometimes I do, but I hardly ever write comments in the dialogue box in the actual course room. I try to keep it just see attached, and I attach a document with all of my comments.
I think a lot of students don't understand that at first when they start to do dissertation work with a chair like yourself or me. They they don't realize that so much of the feedback they're going to get is in the right pane or the right column next
Yeah,
to next to their body of text via comments.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't really understand that ahead of time, so I think I'd add on. Here's something you need to hear from this interview. Um, Something, look in that column. That's where a lot of, I always tell them that's where our conversation happens. And a lot of times they don't even respond. Do your students respond to the comments that you make?
Often they do, but not definitely not all of them. And there are even a few students who didn't even know how to use Microsoft Word
Right,
track changes
right,
to see the comments. I would occasionally get, I didn't see any comments. Well, did you put on track changes? But I wish when I was a graduate student, that's the way, that would have been really helpful. That, I would produce a document, and I'd get like general feedback, maybe, you know, on the phone, or if I went for an office visit. So, I read it, and, just very general feedback. Whereas here at NCU, every single week, they get written feedback on specific sections of a document we're both constructing over time. And so I think that's really valuable.
I think so too. And and as you said, we're only seeking to improve this. I think
Right.
we're ahead of the game being online.
Yeah.
Um, and and you and I are both doing some things um, that I think will improve that process and in the engagement we talked about earlier on. Um, so I want to give people the chance to keep up with you. What's the best way for them to keep up with you and sort of what you're doing in terms of research or in terms of you as a chair at North Central University?
Well, you can always email me, of course. I don't, I really should do better at this, but I've got a blog at Psychology Today on sleep and dreams. And, and I post at least once a month, sometimes once every 2 weeks. So I should do better. Like I should put up, I have a website at my old affiliation in Boston, but I haven't, I don't keep that up either.
Right.
So, uh,
I think we all need administrative assistance.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
but I'm available via email, all the time.
you've
Check
written
my
some books,
NCU.
right?
What's that?
You've written some books as well. Would an audience be interested in those? Has anybody read them?
Well, um, I've had symposiums on my book from conferences
Okay, well,
and journals, and um, uh, the one the I think people would like the one I published last year on sleep and dreams. It's written for upper undergraduate audience, and it's been reviewed pretty widely in the sleep, and it's gotten very very good reviews, and it's the chapters are pretty compact and written at with language that's not like totally scientific, and it's got review questions at the end of each chapter. And the first part of the book is on sleep, the last part of the book is on dreams, and I bring in a lot of really weird stuff about dreams, like talk about really weird dreams like lucid dreams or sleep paralysis dreams or so-called visitation dreams where spirit entities come and visit, and, of course, nightmares and all kinds of dreams of the blind, dreams of the deaf, twin dreams who dream the same dream, which is very strange, precognitive dreams that purportedly predict future events. So at my blog, I constantly get emails from people all over the world sharing these kinds of dreams. So
I'll share with you. And then we'll close up here in a minute. I have a student that I'm sharing, and you're the subject matter expert for the student. I think it's on suicide, something about suicide, and you brought in. I could be confusing students, but you brought in sort of, oh well, what is sort of nightmares? I think you commented on nightmares, and then you shared with me what I didn't know about you, that you had all this vast experience in sort of sleep study and sleep psychology, and I told the student, you've done it. You've gotten somebody on your committee, and we all think that you're going to have a chair that is an expert in your exact study. It's not true. It often doesn't happen, and a subject matter expert is often a misnomer as well. We try to get somebody that knows a chair and subject matter expert that know at least a little bit or a moderate amount about your subject. But it's, in this case, I told the student, you've done it. You've got it, for better and worse. You've got somebody on your committee that knows a lot about what you're studying. And so that means, I told this student to expect, you're going to get a lot of feedback, because Dr. McNamara is invested in this, and he'll know if you're citing, if you're misparaphrasing article, or if you're sort of leaving something out that really should be put in there, like the nightmare discussion. So that was, for me, it helped me realize all this, what we don't know about each other as colleagues. And
true.
For the student, it definitely is a benefit to the student to have that expertise from you.
It's nice when that happens. We can't do that for all students, but it's occasionally that does happen, where this me's interest intersects with the students. It's great. Nightmares it's been discovered in the last 10, 15 years that nightmares are next to perhaps besides depression, the most significant predictor of suicidal ideation.
And here I am as another professor. Often students, I think we all know the same things, but we don't. I'm learning from you right now. I wasn't familiar with that. Maybe I should be. I don't know. But I didn't know that, and that's fascinating to me.
It takes a while for the insights of some scientific field to filter into, general psych textbooks. Like the sleep medicine field takes a while to filter into psych textbooks, and then discoveries in general psych take a while to filter into sleep medicine. And, it's just normal development of science. We can't be aware of everything.
Right.
It's impossible. But, everyone does the best they can.
Well, I'm hoping that this video series does sort of try to emphasize, elucidate some of those areas, and at least if somebody does a study on suicide again in the future and they see the video, they can go looking for that research on how nightmares play a role in suicidal ideation and suicide. I want to close things up, Dr. McNamara. It's been an honor to talk to you today, and perhaps we'll have a follow-up interview in the future. But
sure.
It being a Friday, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And
thanks, Joel.
Of course, I'll see you next week. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, and thanks for the invite. I really enjoyed our conversation, and hang in there to all the students. The dissertation is worth it.
Yes. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.